You just stepped out of a time machine. Quite the situation you found yourself in, only to find yourself in a fight with a stranger. One wild swing later, and he's dead. And it turns out he was your old granddad, or your young granddad, I suppose. In an instant, you vanish, and the question becomes, did you ever exist at all? We are all time travelers, though. We all travel forward in time, second by second, minute by minute, day by day, week by week. Yet moving backward through time isn't just complicated. It breaks things we take for granted, like cause and effect, and, physics. These breakdowns are called paradoxes, loops where actions undo themselves or events happen before their causes. The puzzles that make scientists and philosophers argue over whether time travel is even possible. Some, like Stephen Hawking, believe the laws of physics would block time travel entirely. Others think the universe could fix contradictions by forcing events to stay consistent or by spinning alternate timelines where changes branch off without breaking history. So what do the theories say? From alternate timelines to something called the self-consistency principle, it all starts with your granddad that you just killed. If you're online, someone's going to be tracking you, your location, your browsing habits, maybe even what you type in, which is scary and weird. Using a VPN makes you a lot harder to follow around. Fastest VPN is today's sponsor. VPN that encrypts your internet traffic and hides your IP address so you can browse privately, even on public Wi-Fi. You can also spoof your location, which means you can unlock content from other countries, streaming libraries, news, sites that have weirdly blocked where you are. Loads of sites are like that because they just don't comply with regulations or something. It's very annoying, but not with fastest VPN. And if you're traveling or using hotel or airport Wi-Fi, a VPN like fastest VPN really isn't optional. It's essential. It also blocks ads, trackers, and even warns you if your emails have been in a data breach. So use the link in the description today and join fastest VPN today. Now let's get back to our episode. So we're going to take a look at the grandfather paradox. Can you erase your own existence? And this, of course, is the paradox that everyone thinks of first. What happens if you change the past so drastically that you erase yourself from existence? It was self-defense, but the fact is, you killed your grandfather. You never meet your grandmother, so no parents know you. But here's where the loop breaks. If you were never born, how could you have traveled back to meet your grandfather in the first place? And if you don't interfere, your grandfather lives, you're born, and suddenly the whole cycle repeats itself. Doesn't it? It is the ultimate contradiction, cause and effect folding on each other. That's why scientists, philosophers, and sci-fi writers have obsessed over this paradox for decades. It doesn't just question time travel. It questions whether reality itself is even allowed to make sense. So let's look at the proposed resolutions. Over the years, thinkers have suggested possible ways out of the grandfather paradox. One approach holds that you simply cannot change the established past. Philosopher David Lewis argued that any attempt to kill your ancestor would inevitably be thwarted by some ordinary mishap. The gun jams in that moment, for example, so that history stays consistent. The time traveler might try to alter events, but paradoxical outcome will never actually occur. In this view, one can travel to the past, but only as part of what already happened. So you can fulfill historical events, you can't change them. Similarly, physicist Igor Novikov's self-consistency principle suggests that the law of physics permit only self-consistent timelines. Any action a time traveler takes must have always been a part of history. So contradictory outcomes like erasing oneself are forbidden. An alternative resolution is the concept of multiple timelines or parallel universes. This interpretation, changing the past, places you on a new divergent timeline. If the traveler succeeds in killing their grandfather, a separate branch of reality splits off, one in which the family line ends there. But the time traveler still exists, having originated from the unchanged timeline. This avoids a direct contradiction by creating an alternate history. The trade-off is that the time traveler cannot affect the original world they came from. Their actions pertain only to the new branch. This concept, common in science fiction, sacrifices a single unified history in favor of parallel realities for each major chain. The grandfather paradox forces us to confront the balance between free will and consistency in time. If the past is fixed and unchangeable, a time traveler's freedom is illusionary, and they cannot do anything that history did not record. This leans towards a deterministic universe. If multiple timelines exist instead, then the traveler has the freedom to act, but each action creates a new reality. Either way, the contradiction suggests our universe will not allow an effect to cancel out its own cause. Stephen Hawking speculated that physics might enforce a chronology protection principle to avert such scenarios. In short, the grandfather paradox poses a core question. Can causes be undone by their own effects, or will the universe always find a way to safeguard causality? And then we have the bootstrap paradox. A bootstrap conundrum, or ontological paradox, if you're feeling fancy, occurs when an object or piece of information is passed back in time and becomes trapped in a circular cause and effect loop with no clear origin. In this scenario, an effect is also its own cause, and the sequence of events closes on itself. This situation appears to bypass normal causality by allowing something to exist without ever being created in the first place. For example, suppose a scientist in the future sends a notebook full of vital research back to her younger self. The young scientist uses it to advance her research, and eventually, decades later, sends the same information back in time again. The notebook's contents have no true beginning. They're caught in a time cycle. No one ever wrote the original information. It just simply loops around endlessly. And then the natural question arises, where did this knowledge or object come from originally, if not from the time loop itself? Science fiction is filled with bootstrap riddles. In Robert Heinlein's story, All You Zombies, adapted into the film Predestination in 2014, time traveler becomes both the mother and father of the same child, which is a bizarre loop in which a person literally originates from themselves. Similarly, in the film Somewhere in Time, a pocket watch is handed from an old woman to a young man who later travels into the past and gives the same watch to the woman in her youth. The watch was never originally manufactured. It exists in an eternal loop. These narratives highlight an originless artifact or piece of knowledge that defies our normal understanding of cause and effect. In terms of physics, bootstrap paradoxes are discussed in the context of closed time-like curves and theoretical loops allowed by general relativity. A closed time-like curve is a path through space-time that returns to its own starting point in time. Certain solutions of Einstein's equations permit CDCs, so the laws of physics do not forbid causal loops. These loops are self-consistent, meaning they do not generate a direct contradiction, unlike the grandfather paradox. Yet they defy conventional intuition. It feels as though an effect has happened ex nihilo out of nothing, which violates the usual expectation that every effect has a prior cause. Philosophically, the bootstrap dilemma presents an uncaused event or an event or object with no external origin. It forces a reconsideration of the principle that every effect must have a preceding cause. In a time loop, cause and effect merge and the normal chain of explanation breaks down. For many, the absence of a first cause is deeply unsettling, even if no physical laws are broken. Some have noted that a real object might not survive infinite cycles without change. For example, the watch could age, or a copied message might degrade slightly with each loop, implying the perfect bootstrap loops might be unstable in reality. Nevertheless, as a thought experiment, the bootstrap paradox exposes one of the strangest implications of time travel. A universe where effects exist without a clear origin sustained only by the self-contained logic of a time loop. And then we have the predestination paradox, when the past is unchangeable. The predestination contradiction arrives when a time traveler's actions in the past end up causing the very event the traveler is trying to prevent. In these scenarios, history is self-consistent and unchangeable, and attempts to alter the past become part of the past, fueling destiny rather than averting it. The time traveler cannot escape the timeline's predetermined course. Instead of creating contradiction, the predestination puzzle traps the person in a loop of events that reinforce each other. For example, imagine a man travels back in time to stop a devastating factory fire. The chaos of the intervention, say he frantically evacuates workers. He accidentally knocks over a lantern and ignites the very blaze that he meant to stop. The disaster unfolds exactly as history recorded, and the time traveler's interference turns out to be the real cause. He's not changed the past at all. He simply fulfilled it. This hypothetical captures the essence of a predestination paradox. The attempt to prevent an outcome becomes the cause of that outcome. The idea of inevitability in time also has parallels in myth and literature. Greek mythology, I'm bad with these Greeks. Oedipus is destined to kill his father and marry his mother, and despite his parents' desire to avoid this fate, those very efforts set the stage for the prophecy to come true. Similarly, a predestination anomaly in time travel suggests that trying to outwit fate instead ensures it. The timeline locks in certain events and makes them unavoidable. Many time travel stories have explored the notion of an unchangeable past. In the film 12 Monkeys from 1995, a traveler from the future attempts to stop a catastrophic virus outbreak. Despite his efforts, all he achieves is to play his part in history. Nothing he does manages to prevent the disaster, and his presence is always a part of the story. Another example appears in The Time Machine from 2002, where an inventor repeatedly goes back to save his fiancée from death, only to discover that her death is a fixed point in time, and if she had lived, he would never have built the time machine. So she must die in every timeline to preserve that causality. These stories illustrate the same outcome. The past is fixed, and all attempts to change it either fail or ironically cause the very events they sought to change. This paradox raises profound questions about determinism and free will. If time travel can only fulfill history, then the universe is deterministic. Events in the past and future are fixed. Even with foreknowledge, one cannot alter what happened. It suggests a form of temporal fatalism, the belief that events are fated to occur and that human actions, even time travel, cannot change them. In physics, the predestination paradox aligns with the Novikov self-consistency principle. Any attempt to change a past event will be thwarted in a way that preserves consistency. In a predestination scenario, there is no logical contradiction as the timeline remains intact and self-consistent. But it defies our normal expectation that people should be able to change events. It underscores the notion that if backward time travel is possible, the universe might enforce a rule that causes and effects form a closed loop and history cannot be rewritten. Then we have the Polchinski paradox, billiard balls and broken consistency. Not all time travel thought experiments involve people. Some reveal contradictions in basic physics. Polchinski's paradox is a thought experiment into which a billiard ball travels through a wormhole, a tunnel through space-time, and back in time. The ball emerges from the past end of the wormhole and collides with its younger self in such a way that it prevents the younger ball from ever entering the wormhole. In short, the ball knocks itself off course and stops its own time travel. If the younger ball never goes in, how can the older one come out? This is a clear consistency contradiction. Polchinski's scenario is sort of like the grandfather paradox, but in mechanical form. There is no question of free will, only geometry and momentum. If physics allows the ball to interfere with its own past trajectory, it seems to permit a logical contradiction. To investigate, physicist Kip Thorne and his colleagues analyzed whether any self-consistent outcome could exist. And they found that paradox-free answers are indeed possible. For example, the ball could emerge from the wormhole at a slightly different angle or time, delivering only a glancing blow to its younger self. The younger ball would still go in the wormhole, just on a slightly altered path, one that leads to it becoming the older ball that bumps into its past self. In this way, the events become self-consistent. The collision happens, but it does not prevent the time travel. Thor's team showed that there can even be multiple such consistent trajectories for the ball. In fact, for certain initial conditions, an infinite number of distinct self-consistent paths exist. The ball might hit itself at various angles, and each scenario can close the loop without contradiction. This finding suggests that if backward time travel is possible, physics might always find at least one loophole to avoid a logical contradiction. Instead of an impossible situation, the ball and wormhole chooses a consistent outcome from many possibilities. However, this result is unsettling from a classical physics perspective. Normally, a given initial state has one unique outcome, not many. Polchinski's thought exercise shows that time loops could undermine that quality. For physicists, this thought experiment underscores the need for a consistency constraint in any viable theory of time travel. Some, like Stephen Hawking, have argued that perhaps no time machines can exist at all. A chronology protection conjecture, because allowing such loops might break physics in unpredictable ways. Others trust that the Novikov's Styles' self-consistency principle would hold, meaning the laws of nature will always prevent true paradoxes. Either way, Pachinski vividly demonstrates that if casual time loops were possible, even a simple billiard ball could generate a paradox unless the universe clearly avoids it. Not all, Then we have the twin paradox. Not all strange time travel scenarios violate logic. The twin scenario is an example from Einstein's relativity that involves time travel into the future without any casual contradictions. In this thought experiment, one of two identical twins makes a high-speed journey in a spacecraft while the other twin remains on Earth. When the traveling twin returns home, he finds that he's aged much less than his stay-at-home sibling. Now, this sounds puzzling because from each twin's perspective, the other was in motion. So naively, each might expect the other to be younger. So how can only one twin come back younger? And the key lies in the quirks of special relativity. Time's not absolute. It flows at different rates for observers in different states of motion. Specifically, moving clocks run slower relative to stationary ones, which is a phenomenon called time dilation. During the journey, the spacefaring twins' clock and biological aging process progresses more slowly compared to Earth's frame. Both twins do observe time dilation in the other, but the situation is not symmetric. The traveling twin undergoes acceleration and changes course to return while the Earth twin stays in a single inertial frame. That acceleration frames break the symmetry between their viewpoints. When they reunite, less time has elapsed for the traveling twin. In other words, the path through space-time taken by the rocket twin is shorter in time than the path taken by the Earth twin. Unlike the others discussed, the twin example is not a true paradox, and there is no contradiction once relativity is taken into account. Both twins agree on what happened when they meet again. The traveling twin is indeed younger, and physics provides a consistent explanation. The apparent conundrum arises only from a misunderstanding of how time behaves at very high velocities. Lorentz transformations, the equation of special relativity, accurately describe how time and space coordinates shift between moving frames, and they predict the age difference. The prediction has been confirmed experimentally. Precise atomic clocks flown on fast aircraft return slightly behind synchronized clocks on the ground, exactly as relativity predicted. The twin paradox highlights that forward time travel, moving into the future faster than someone else, is achievable under known physics. By traveling at near light speed or by experiencing intense gravity, as general relativity allows, you can slow the passage of time relative to others. In effect, the traveling twin leaps into Earth's future. This scenario is called a paradox only because it defies intuition, but it poses no threat to logical consistency. It shows that time travel to the future is not only possible, but routinely observed in small degrees, all without breaking the laws of physics or tangling causality. Time travel paradoxes invite reflection that extends beyond physics. They challenge the way we think about change, continuity, and the links between actions and consequences. Questions about whether events are fixed or open to alteration have been part of philosophy for centuries, long before they were framed in the language of space-time and quantum mechanics. The scenarios explored by physicists and storytellers become thought experiments for examining free will, determinism, and the boundaries of human reasoning. While time travel remains hypothetical, the mind-blowing conundrums it inspires function as stress tests for logic itself. They require us to imagine how reality would respond under the strain of contradictory causes and effects. And in doing so, they offer a sharper perspective on how the present connects both past and future. Thank you for watching.